record this, share the screen. So on Friday, we talked about parabolas X and Y. If it opens up, down, left, right, how we know everything about it, the focus and the directrix. Today, by the end of class, you should be able to do this off of the origin. All of the questions I asked you on Friday are going to be the same questions I ask you now. So hopefully you understand this. The only thing that you need to write down on this page are these top two equations. Make sure you write them down. Make sure you know them, but take a second and look at them, write them down. Now, I'm going to start with the one on the right side. Again, your A value, and maybe you want to write this down again, maybe you just want to see, your A value is 1 over 4p. We've been doing this for a while, so your vertex here would be the point HK. H always goes with your X, K always goes with your Y. Now, we said that over and over and over again, but one thing we haven't addressed is, well, what if it's X equals? If it is affecting your Y, that's going to be the K value. Now H is on the outside. Again, that should make sense. If it goes with the Y, it's the K. So it's always the opposite of what's in parentheses, and then the outside is what it is. Now, you might see some written like this second way, but we don't focus on that at all. I always want you to solve for your linear variable. Now, I got kind of mathy with this, but we won't stay too mathy. I'm going to break this down and put it in plain English here in just a second. So if it opens up or down, if it opens up or down, for your focus, again, you add P to the appropriate coordinate. In this case, because it would be a Y equals equation, you add it to the K value. To find your directrix, you would subtract the value of P from your K value. If it's X equals, you would add your P value to the H coordinate, or you would subtract it from the H coordinate to find your directrix. So it's all right here, and you might need to come back to this page. Any questions before we really get into the details here? All right. So let's get started. I want you to find the vertex, the focus, and the directrix of the equation and graph. Oh boy, we're getting right into the hard stuff. Why do I always have to start so hard? Take about 30 seconds and write this down. Man, this kind of stinks. What do you think I should do first? No one?
Distribute the -4.
Good. We know that we have to solve for y because it's our linear variable. Look, x is being squared, so I want to distribute this -4. So when I do that, I've got x plus 2 squared minus 4y minus 4 equals 0. If I want to solve for y, I'm going to add 4y to both sides. divide everything by 4. When I do that, here's what I get. Now, somebody might say, didn't we already know the vertex? Wouldn't our vertex just be the opposite of what's going on in the parentheses? And the answer is simply, yes, it is. I don't want you to worry about another form, though. So right away, does this open up, down, left, or right?
Up.
And how do you know it opens up?
A is positive and it's a y equals equation.
Perfect. So my vertex is -2, -1. So -2, -1, there's my vertex. And she said she knows that it opens up. So she knows it's going to look something like this, right? Which means my focus has to be somewhere up here. My directrix has to be somewhere down here. So any questions about that, first of all? Make sense of what it should look like before you go. Any questions so far?
So like with the -4, you divided it by 4 and on both sides.
So I divided everything by 4 because I added 4y to the other side. Then I want to solve for y, so I divided by 4, and everything gets divided by 4.
Okay.
And by everything, remember, that's a quantity, so the whole thing is getting divided by 4. But make sure it goes to both of them. So any questions before we get into the math here? All right, so let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to erase this because, again, this is math class, and we don't want to just go by what it kind of looks like. We want to know everything about it. So my next step is going to be, remember, A equals 1 over 4p. Well, what's my A value here?
1/4.
So I've got 1/4 equals 1 over 4p, cross multiply. And what does p equal?
Does it equal 1?
Yes. So 4p equals 4, so p is 1. Now, again, I'm going to show you this by making sense of it, by putting the drawing up first. And then we're going to kind of get away from the drawing, and we're going to do this just with math. So remember, P is the distance from the vertex to the focus. So does this P value from the vertex to the focus, and you already said it opens up, right? So from the vertex, I would go up one step right here. The opposite of P. So if I went one step up, I'd have to go one step down, and that means my directrix would be right here. Any questions about that? Now, you're not going to see me graph it first very often, because if my p-value is 1, is this an x equals equation or a y equals equation?
Y.
Yeah, y is my linear variable. So I would add the value of p to the y value. I'll come to the y because it's y equals. So your focus would have to be at -2, 0. Your directrix, you subtract the p-value from the appropriate coordinate. So for the directrix, again, it's y equals, so it's going to be y equals. Here I would subtract 1 from my y value. -1 minus 1 is -2. We've got it all down. Any questions so far? And by the way, on your test or quiz, when you do this, I don't care if you want to graph it first and make sense of it, or if you want to do the math first. But P is always your distance from the vertex to the focus. Then the opposite of P, you go the other way to get to the directrix. So the last thing I'm going to do, let's see how to graph it. We need the lattice rectum. So the length here, so remember the lattice rectum is just 4P, which in this case is just 4. So if I divide it by 2, I take both steps, 2 to the left of the focus and 2 to the right of the focus. There you go. Any questions? I didn't mean to do that. Any questions?
Wait, I thought it would be like times four. Wait, isn't it 4, 1?
So
Where'd you get 2 from?
because the length of the lattice rectum is 4P. So this is the lattice rectum right here, right? So it is 1, 2, 3, 4. So it is 4 steps. But I'm talking about how many steps do I get to the parabola? Well, I have to divide it by 2. So 2 this way and 2 that way. So the whole thing has to be 4. Any questions? All right, let's move on. All right, take a second and try this one on your own. Find the vertex first. All right, so I went ahead and I solved for my linear variable. I didn't want to spend too much time on that. So any questions about what I did?
So like with the +8, so like you divide it by the opposite, so like -8.
So I didn't divide by the opposite. I solved for x. I had to get x by itself, right? So instead of moving all of this stuff to the other side, I just subtracted 8x from this side. So when I subtracted 8x over here, did it over here, so that's when I ended up with negative 8x. Then I need to solve for the linear variable, so I had to divide everything by negative 8. Does that make sense, Greta?
So you divided it by -8 because it's opposite of +8?
No. I divided by negative 8 because I had to move this positive 8x to the other side. So basically, I'm just solving for my linear variable. So you would agree with the first step, right, Greta? How I've got, when I distribute, I've got 8x plus 8, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I need to solve for x, so I'm going to subtract that. So my next step was this, because I had to move this positive 8x to the other side or get rid of it over here, right?
Yeah.
So then I want to solve for x, so I have to divide by whatever the coefficient is, which in this case is negative 8.
Oh, okay, yeah, now I get it. I thought you were dividing something else.
No, you're good. So that's the same. So that's the same as what you guys have been doing since 6th grade. It's just showing you a different way.
Okay, yeah, I get it now.
Okay, so we're there. Let me erase this part. So any questions about this? So you have to solve for the linear variable first. How did I know that was the linear variable? Because this one is squared and this one was not. Now, what is my vertex? There's going to be some argument and some people that forgot about what I said at the beginning. What's my vertex here? What do you think?
-1, 3.
Can I get somebody to either confirm or correct that?
I also got -1, 3.
How? Explain to me how you guys are thinking and why. Why do you say it's -1, 3?
Isn't it because like it's x, so it's like facing, it's on the x-axis, so it's going left?
So that's exactly right. Because it's x equals, pay attention to what's there. That makes this your k value and this your h value. That's absolutely right. Well done. And stand by your answer. So whether you're right or wrong, I still want you guys to explain what you're thinking. So if you're wrong, I can correct you. And if you're right, everybody else can hear your thought process. So well done. Because it's x equals, and in the parentheses the y, that means my k value has to be +3. My h value, whatever's right here, is what it is. So -1, 3. Any questions about that? Now I'm going to graph this last because I want you to think about it algebraically. So what's my a value here?
-1/8.
Equals 1 over 4p. So cross multiply, and what'd you get for p?
-2.
Perfect. Any questions on that? Now, this very well may be easier to graph this first and see what it should look like. So if that's what you need or want to do, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I also want you to understand what the value of p is. So p is -2. So how does it affect this? So for my focus, I always add whatever my p value is to the appropriate coordinate. In this case, would that be the x coordinate or y coordinate, and how come?
The x,
It's the x. Why'd you say the x?
because it's moving from left to right.
Good. And because it's x equals, that's exactly right. So I'm going to add -2 to the x coordinate. So my focus is going to be at -3, 3. Any questions there? I'll switch here to purple. And for my directrix, is it going to be x equals or y equals?
Y equals
Dave, is this an x equals equation or a y equals equation?
X equals.
So it has to be x equals. Again, that's why I always want you guys to come back to this original equation and part of why we solve for the linear variable. It's x equals, and wait a minute, if p is -2, now I need to subtract -2 from the x coordinate. So when you minus -2, you really add 2, so my directrix is x equals 1. Any questions? All right, so the last thing, let's make sense of this. So we just did this, we did the math first, now we'll graph it. So we know what it should look like, so let's make sure it looks like that. -1, +1, 2, 3 is my vertex. My A value is negative, so it should open left. My focus is at -1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There's my focus. There's my vertex. My directrix, if my p-value is 2, so I go 2 this way. Does this look so far like a feasible answer? And it does because it always opens towards the focus. The last thing, remember, the length from here to here is just going to be 2p. But my lattice rectum, the length of the entire chord, lattice rectum is going to be 4p. P is -2, so the length is divided by 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Eek, that was a terrible parabola. Don't judge me by that. Any questions?
Wait, now I just got confused.
Uh-huh.
Where did we get this? Did the 8 come from the -1/8? Like,
So the length of the lattice rectum, it's always going to be 4 times p. So I could just go back to this value right here and say it's got to be -8, but I don't want you to get caught up in that because sometimes it'll be a whole number and it gets confusing. So once you have your p value, the length of the lattice rectum, so the chord that goes through the focus parallel to the directrix, the length of this has to be 4p. So the length of this, and you can't have negative length, so the length of this has to be 8, which is 4 steps this way and 4 steps this way. Questions? Now let's see here real quick. Let's see if I put any notes down here. I can't remember. Yeah. So the focus, because it's x equals, the p-value is added to the x coordinate of the vertex. And again, because it's x equals, it has to be an x equals equation, and it is subtracted from the x coordinate. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. And we're kind of running out of time here, so let's move on to a different style. Again, this is an X class, so we're typically not going to see more than a couple examples of each type. You can always watch this and then either ask for help, come to my office hours, or ask me tomorrow. So now, I want you to find the standard form satisfying the given conditions. So I give you the vertex and I give you the focus. I could always just make sense of this. I probably should start before my pencil ever touches the paper by making sense of this anyway. My vertex is 1, -1. My focus is 7, -1. There's a lot we know with just that. This is about as easy as it gets. My vertex is 1, negative 1. That's my vertex. My focus is 7, negative 1. So if this is my vertex and this is my focus, which direction does it open?
Right.
Yeah, it has to open to the right. So is this going to be an x equals equation or a y equals equation?
X.
So it has to be x equals. Now I'm starting by showing you guys how to make sense of this and what this all means. To go faster, we don't have to do this every single time, but I'm not caught up in the speed right now. Has to be x equals because it always opens towards your focus. But remember that P is the distance from your vertex to the focus, right? So what is the distance from here to here? Or how many?
6.
6. So if your P value is 6, remember A equals 1 over 4P. So how can you write the equation with this? Take a second and see if you guys can do it on your own. By a second, I mean about 20 seconds, see if you can write the equation. All right, so somebody tell me, what'd you get for the equation for this? What's your A value going to be?
1 over 24.
Perfect. And because it's x equals, I know it's going to be y something squared. So what do you think it's going to be? Y plus 1 or y minus 1? And remember, I gave you the vertex. So this is your h value, that's your k value. So what goes with the y?
Plus 1?
Exactly, because the k goes with the y, so that's plus 1, and you're finished. Now it said standard form. I'm not going to make you guys multiply this all the way out. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. Let's see. And you guys might want to kind of read this. But because the x value changed and the y stayed the same, has to be an x equal equation. So look at which one is changing. To find your A value, find the distance from your vertex to the focus. Now on your homework, it kept saying something like use the distance formula. Guys, you don't need to use the distance formula. How far is it from the vertex to the focus? That's it. Let's try it again. But what if I change it up this time? Oh boy, I went right into a hard one here. Again, because we are running out of time, but if I'm trying to find the standard form and I give you the focus and the directrix, can you put this all together? Start by finding your vertex, and if you want to graph that first, that's fine. Before you guys even finish, can somebody tell me, is this going to be an x equals equation or y equals equation? How in the world do you know?
A y, because
Y.
the directrix is y equals -9.
Yeah, so if the directrix, if I give you the equation of the directrix, then we already know it. It's going to be x equals or y equals because it says right there. So this has to be a y equals equation. So I can start right away saying I know it's going to be y equals. Oh man, but I don't have the vertex, so I can make sense of this first. 7, -1. That's my focus. My directrix is y equals -9, which is going to be this line. So that's my focus, and this is my directrix. But how in the world do I find my vertex? Anybody have any clue?
Find the distance between the focus and the directrix and divide by 2.
That's exactly right. So which value has changed? Which value changed, my x value or y value?
Y.
The y value. So the x stayed the same. So remember, the x is going to stay the same. My vertex has to be over here. Wouldn't make any sense if my vertex were over here. So they have to be lined up. I could do this, -1 plus -9 divided by 2, which makes it -5. Or I could do this. I know that they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 apart. So I could go up 4, down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's my vertex. So there's lots of different ways to look at this and make sense of it. So my x value stayed the same, my y value is going to be -5. It really is easy enough. You just have to understand what's going on. So what is my p value then?
Four.
Yeah, it's +4 because it's 4 steps up. 4 steps down, right? So if your p-value is 4, my equation is 1 over 4 times 4, x, oh boy. It's going to be what? X what?
-7,
Squared, and then +5 or -5?
minus.
-5, perfect. Again, to find your vertex first, the vertex is halfway or the midpoint between the focus and directrix. Because your directrix is y equals, only look at the y values, the other value stays the same. So your x value has to stay the same. I think this is the last one. Let me check. Yeah. Last one. And I know we've only got about 8 minutes to go. Do this on your own. And then we've done one sample problem of everything you guys should need to see. I went ahead and pulled the box down. So I gave you guys a bunch of hints here. Make sense of it. So all I've done is I graphed the vertex and I put the directrix up there. So you guys can easily make sense of this problem before you ever do it. This is my vertex. How many steps is it from my vertex to my directrix?
4.
So I have to go 4 in the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4 to find my focus. So my value of p is really going to be -4. Now, again, some people are going to say, I don't understand how'd you get -4. Well, remember, if it opens down, then your A value has to be negative. So is it going to be x equals or y equals? Because your directrix is y equals, it has to be y equals 1/4p, which makes it -1/16. I know the vertex. That's it, just plug and chug. Does that make any sense? Does anybody have any questions? Now, I highly suggest doing your homework or trying your homework tonight. I know that there's going to be some awkwardly worded questions. I don't love big ideas problem sets. Some of them are very good. Some of them are not so good. So take a minute, look through them. If you need any help, email me, and I will be on from 2:45 to 3:15 tonight. All right. I'm going to go ahead and erase this and stop sharing here. Again, before I say goodbye, does anybody have any questions on anything so far? All right, then I'm going to stop recording.